Houston, our instruments are showing that we have a incoming message from deep space. Repeat, Houston, we have an incoming message from deep space. Houston, we'll begin playing message now. Houston, we're going to try and translate that up here. Hold for translation. Translation complete. We'll begin playing message now.
Hey, it's me, Melissa.
What do you do when the aliens invade? Take a shot of MK Ultra and watch Melissa Jade. Put on your tinfoil hat and tune right in. We got that crime spree, flat earth theories, government conspiracies, a complex Mandela effects, unidentified optics, a mind expanding, fake moon landing, what it all bends understanding. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa. Aliens on the sun or in Area 51. Time travels, unravels, haunted castles, cops are baffled, potential experimental thoughts that make you transcendental. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa. Crime sprees, flat earth theories, government conspiracies, complex Mandela effects, unidentified objects, a mind expanding, fake moon landing, what it all bends understanding. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Vanessa.
Hey, good to be here.
How
I
are
love
you?
your intro, by the way.
Thank you. That's the one and only Bryn. He made it, wrote it, sung it. He did everything. He's so talented.
Oh, really?
And he
I love
incorporated all of the things that I love to cover all within one song, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I love it.
Hi, guys. Hi, 87, Mikey, Shape and Nay, Wolfie, K-Braze, Taylor, Musicity Mom, Katie, Daylene, Legendary DJ, Angela, Willie, Carol freaking Claus. Hello, everybody. I'm not going to scroll through everybody today, but welcome. We have the lovely Vanessa from Unmasked with us as a special guest. I look forward to this. I've had her on before, and we discussed The Devil Made Me Do It, the Conjuring case. It's been a while.
It's been a long time.
But I love that I haven't had your feedback at all on this case. So everything that I ask and everything that we discuss is going to be generic and natural. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Yep. I just realized that when you said it, I didn't realize we never really have discussed this that much.
I'm excited. Okay. So as you guys know, I've been covering the Idaho case. If you don't know, Vanessa's actually going to be going to Idaho to cover the trial, right?
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about that, what you're planning on doing?
So you guys know it's supposed to be 6 weeks. So I don't know the exact date. I know that I'm not interested in really going for jury selection or anything like that. But we are going to go for at least a week, a little bit more during the trial. I just have to see as we get closer. I mean, you never know. But as we get closer, we'll have like more solid dates. But yeah, we were supposed to go in June, but then obviously got moved. But yeah, we're going to be there.
That's really exciting, and I really look forward to that coverage. So the mods are going to be dropping Unmasked link throughout, so just make sure you go over and subscribe. I wish I could go. It's got to be so different looking at it, and we don't know if they're going to stream it. I anticipate they're not going to stream it. What do you think?
I don't think they will either. And it is totally different because like the energy is different watching on the screen. Because I remember I've been to a couple things so far, like especially the high profile are weird to go to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I wish that you could, they had like a schedule and you could plan because I know exactly what testimony I want to go to, but I don't know if it's going to work out that way. Dylan.
Yep. There's a lot of questions surrounding that. And yeah, I wish, do they ever come out with a schedule as far as with the witnesses and what order they're going to be in?
I mean, when I went to the to Barry Morphew's, pretrial, and then I went to Chris Watts' sentencing, so both were really interesting. But I don't remember with the pretrial. We kind of knew who was going to be each day, but I don't know how it's going to be with this. And I imagine there's going to be a lot of people that want to see that particular testimony. Well, both roommates, but
Mhm.
I think Dylan's is going to be the most fascinating of the whole trial.
See, what was interesting is that we don't really know anything regarding Bethany, but then the defense came out with Bethany could have exculpatory evidence. And so a lot of people were speculating maybe we had this all wrong. Maybe Bethany saw something that was even more important than Dylan. But I was listening to Mallory over on Allie's the other day, and she made a good point. She said that something as simple as, hey, I saw this person drinking that night, or something like that could actually be exculpatory evidence because that could prove that the witness is not credible.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting to me.
It could be something like that, or it could be something like, well, she told me something slightly different than what was on the PCA or something like that. You never know. Or maybe she texted her, those texts, if there were any overnight, would be interesting. But I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to make a difference.
Okay, so the first thing I have to ask, do you have a working theory surrounding this case?
Yeah. I absolutely believe that Brian, and I don't know how, I know there's rumors. I think that he spotted, my personal opinion is Maddie. I believe he became fixated on her. He stalked her. And I think that he thought he could get in and out of that house without waking other people. And we've seen it before, and we can get into that if you want to, but there have been killers that have done this exact, very close replica of this murder before. And this quickly, by the way. But yeah, I think I think he went upstairs. I think that I don't know about Kaylee yet because we know that she had come back like last minute for that weekend. If he was stalking, I go back and forth. If he was stalking, then he should have known she was there, right? And they've been on social media that night. But who knows? Maybe he didn't care if he got both of them. Maybe he thought he could get in and out. But what I had thought is because Murphy was locked in her room and her mom had said that that Murphy always slept with the girls. I had it in my head that Kaylee heard something. That's when she heard her playing with the dog, shut the dog, in the room behind her, walked in on him attacking Maddie. And that's partly the reason he forgot the sheath. Everything went sideways. You know what I mean? And then went downstairs.
See, I'm not one of the people who thinks that Maddie and Kaylee were in separate beds because they were drinking that night. Kaylee wasn't going to be staying there, so she was visiting. They were eating carbonara. There were multiple calls to Jack. And so we know one of their last moments they were together, right? Because if they're calling Jack together, I'm assuming that they were in the same bed. Yep. I'm more likely to believe that they stayed in the same bed than at one point Kaylee left and then resulted in the bed again at a later point. And because the timeline is already so tight, I feel like now I have to incorporate Kaylee getting out of the room and coming in, and then there's some type of struggle. And how would they result in the bed both together unless, unfortunately, like he, put her there or something like that.
I could totally see it your way too. I'm not sold on the separate beds, same beds thing because I could see it happening either way. It's a little strange to me that Murphy was shut in the door of the room. I wish we knew more about that. But I mean, now we're kind of assuming their habits and things that we can't do, and that's what happens. But right. I do think that's why he went directly upstairs. I do think that his target was Maddie. And then I think, this isn't the part, I don't know what you think about working out with Xana, but I do believe that, it was a little louder than he anticipated. Dylan had talked about hearing stuff, and maybe Xana either was in the kitchen putting her bag up, or she was in the kitchen because she heard something, or maybe as she was there, she heard something above her and said, there's someone here. And then, I don't know, either he came downstairs or he saw them down the hall. But I think that they didn't have time to even process what was happening before he attacked them.
So you think that, and I hate saying collateral damage because it feels so, devaluing them, but you think Ethan and Xana were collateral damage and that wasn't his intention?
I do. I could be wrong, obviously, but I do think that the time is really short. Yeah. I do think that they were an afterthought because of witnesses. And I think that he probably fantasized about this so much in his head that when he got in there and really started doing it's not like his fantasies. And I think things went wrong. I do not think he intentionally left this sheath at all. I think that was a freak out. He messed up. Could even be why he came by the next day.
But where do you think the sheath was? Because there's no way that that sheath would have gotten off his belt. The only way that would have gotten off is if he physically took the belt off and then the loop came off. So how do you think the sheath came to get in the bed? Do you think he was holding it? It was in his pocket? That's like a really rookie mistake. Why would you even bring the sheath in if you were going to physically hold it? Thank you so much, Punksy.
Okay, I have two theories on that.
Okay.
And I know there's going to be people that say this. There's been a lot of murders in history where the purpose going in is to commit an assault, but the assault never happens. There's too many to mention when that happens because things go wrong and things happen or they can't or whatever, or they get interrupted. I really do wonder if his intent of going in there was to assault her first.
Ooh.
That could be why his belt wasn't on, or maybe he liked holding it because he felt tough. I don't know. But I do think that there's going to be a sexual element we find out about this in trial.
I've actually never heard that theory before, that possibly he was wearing a belt and that it came off because at some point the belt was unbuckled, but for whatever reason something happened that he didn't follow through with it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the Doordash? Oh, go ahead. What was your thought?
I think the Doordash driver is going to be a very interesting witness in this trial. We heard, I didn't know what to think at first, but we heard from Xana's friends that this is normal for her to order Doordash at 3, 4 a.m. It's not out of well, that was what they said in interviews anyway, that this is normal for her. So I do think, and then I don't want to bring up the dreaded footage, but just saying, when you look at that and line it up with the PCA and stuff, I mean, it looks like it lines up. I think that he did wait for the Doordash driver to leave.
But it's so odd. It's so odd because he waited for over 30 minutes, right? And he was doing these maneuvers. And if you're playing with the theory that he wasn't anticipating the Doordash, he would have been scoping it out, making sure that there wasn't activity, that the coast is clear.
Mm-hmm.
So when that unknown vehicle pulls up and it alerts you that at least one or more people are awake and active in that house, isn't it peculiar to you that that's the moment he decides to gain entry? It
is. That is weird to me. The only thing I can think of to explain that is that, and I thought, well, first of all, the PCA says they were all in the rooms by 4, which I thought was kind of telling and could be why he was circling, but I think that he was going to sneak in that back door, go up those stairs discreetly. Xana and Ethan are the other end of the house or the other side of the house. He sneaks up there, he does what he's going to do, and he goes right back out through that kitchen door. I don't think he was trying to run into Xana or Ethan. And there's a lot of windows on that house. He could have seen that Maddie and Kaylee's lights were out and that they looked still from the woods. And he could have seen that from the front that Xana and Ethan's light was on or something. I don't know.
It's so, because everything according to the PCA is happening around 4 a.m. And so if he saw the door, like, how would he know? Because there was no sign of forced entry. So how would he even know that the door was left open? Like, that was what was his backup plan if that slider door wasn't open?
That's such a good question. And I've wondered that same thing so many times. That's the one thing. And I know people talked about the window too, but to me, that's a clumsy way to get in, because you can, like, you saw the kitchen and how it is all like kind of messy in there. I mean, he steps on, I mean, I know if I were trying to sneak in quietly through a window like that, I would knock every single thing off the counters. I'm a klutz. Everyone would know I was there. I think it's a sloppy way to get in, but maybe that was his backup plan. I don't know. There was a TikTok at the very beginning. It's not available anymore, but the very first 2 weeks, and I always forget to mention this, but it was the 6th roommate who wasn't there anymore, and all of her stuff is locked down now. But she had a TikTok out, and I know because I have it screen recorded somewhere, where they were doing a tour of the house. Some of you guys might have seen this. It's been following it from the beginning. And she talks about how their kitchen window is broken and doesn't lock. And it's
a slider door? Or the window, the slider door.
Window. She talks about, she does this whole tour, and they talk about for a while how the kitchen window does not lock, which I thought, God, they're just making a TikTok, but
Right.
It was there until the murders. It was on her account.
So if he was, do you know if her account was open in public?
I was able to see it, so I think it was. And then all of a sudden it was gone.
See, that's
So,
what's terrifying about today's day and age is that stalkers, you don't need to be sitting outside anyone's homes anymore. Everything is on social media. You know your locations, you know who you're with. It's terrifying because he could have known the exact movements. But then, if we're going back to Ann Taylor, she states that there's no connection between the victims. But we know a lot of sources came out earlier on and said that there were Instagram accounts following the victims. What do you think about that?
well, I thought it was a weird thing to say because if you're going to double down and say there's absolutely no connection between Brian and the victims, then why is his DNA in there? They would have been better off saying that, yeah, he might have gone to a party there, or he might have been in and out of the house before, because we know he was in Moscow from witnesses saying that he was hanging around there like for weeks before. But I thought it was a strange thing to say just because of that, because she's basically now, how do you explain the DNA there
Right.
if there's no connection? But I also think, I'm dying to know, like everyone else, did she really mean that in those papers? Because she could just mean that they haven't seen it yet.
Right. It means the same thing with the total lack of DNA, because that's what I
Yeah,
was going to ask you next. That
yeah.
just means that they may not have anything yet. And total lack of DNA, do you take that as none whatsoever or lacking, insufficient?
I find, and I again, I could be totally wrong because this guy knows what he's doing. He's smart. He's a doctoral candidate in criminal justice. So and he had 6 weeks jump on investigators, right? But I don't think that there's not going to be any DNA evidence. They
I
found those hairs. They found it. I don't know. I don't know what you think. I think that there is going to be evidence.
So then, if there is going to be, how does Anne say that? Like, because a lot of people are struggling with this, because it's like total lack of. Like, how isn't that possible? Did he Dexter the car? He did have 6 weeks to clean, but people aren't sold with that single source of DNA on the sheath. Now, that doesn't mean that the sheath isn't covered with DNA. Maybe it's just a single source that's recoverable. Same thing with the car. Maybe there is, because we know when you clean it, that it becomes, it's not as easy to pull actual full sources of DNA from it. So maybe there is DNA. It's just not enough to figure out an identity behind it.
Well, if you're going to say that the DNA could be, touch DNA from anywhere and it somehow ended up on the knife, which is plausible, I know how touch DNA is, but then you've got to discount all of the other circumstances, the cell phone pings, his car. And you've got the fact that he bought that exact knife and sheath in April. The guy has some bad luck, in my opinion. I think that on its own, any of this evidence just on its own isn't anything. You could argue it and explain it away. I think it's going to be everything in totality.
Mm-hmm. What do you think he went back for the next morning at 9 a.m. when he picked? Because again, we have two different profiles of Kohberger. You have one side that is portraying him as this extremely educated student who knows what he's doing, who managed to do these murders in such a short time frame. But then we also have the other Kohberger who brought his phone, brought his car, made very sloppy mistakes. So what do you think he returned for? Because I think he returned because Dylan saw him. I think he saw Dylan likely. I think that Ethan and Xana were, again, collateral damage. I don't like to use that term, but when your adrenaline is pumping, I think it was a lot louder than he anticipated. It was caught on the neighboring audio. You had Murphy barking. When your adrenaline's rushing, you can't really perceive how much time just passed. How loud really was that? And so I think he fully thought 911 was already called. And so as hours passed, there's no alert going off on his phone. There's nothing on the news. And I think he did a drive-by because curiosity was killing him and he wanted to see what activity was going on.
I think you're totally right. I had this in a video at one point. I'm on the fence about whether or not he came back. I think obviously he came back to see, how come I haven't heard anything? How come this isn't all over the news? And I can't help but think that on top of that, he had to be under an immense amount of stress, realizing, I don't know when he realized it, probably somewhere driving down to Blaine or wherever he drove, where he realized, oh my God, I forgot the sheath. I think that would have been really stressing him out, as much of a perfectionist as people say that he is. I mean, anyone would panic over that, I would think.
Yeah. But just like you said, like, you couldn't plan this murder to a T, because I don't know, do you think that this is Brian's first kill?
I do.
Me too. So you could plan it out to a T. You could have everything in your mind designed that this is how it's going to go, but you can't account for what's going to happen in the moment. And so I think that that's exactly what happened, is that for whatever reason or not, that sheath landed there, and there's just things that you can't account for. But it's just strange that he decided to shut his phone off when he did the first maneuvers out to the house, but he returned with his phone. It doesn't make sense.
I agree. I guess he could argue. I don't know what he could argue, honestly, because he didn't turn it off the other 12, or what is it, 11 times now? I forget.
12 times, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, he didn't turn it off those times too. So I think it makes it even more obvious. But why did he turn it off then? What is going to be his alibi? You know?
And he also shut it off for another 3 hours later on in the evening of the 13th, or around 5 to 8 p.m. I don't know the exact times. What do you think he was doing between that time frame?
I think he was getting rid of a bunch of evidence. Where's his shower curtain, for one thing?
Or
did he line his seats, right? Or did he do something like that? I think he went down there and got rid of evidence, if he was smart, got rid of all of the bloody evidence. Maybe the knife, but I've always had this weird instinct that he probably kept the knife. I think it would be too like a trophy. Yeah. I have a feeling he kept that.
I think he kept it. I think between so he took over an hour to get back to his apartment after he left the King Road house. That's when I think he ditched his clothes, whatever. Maybe he did put his shower curtain down. And then he got rid of it and he went back. And then he waited. And then after news broke, I don't think he would have gotten rid of the knife either, but I think he put it somewhere that was recoverable, but out there and hidden, not on his persons.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a possibility. Yeah. And another thing about the DNA that I think there's a lot to remember in this case. So I went back and watched a lot of the coverage at the very beginning, right? And we forget, or I did, that they were collecting DNA from a lot of people. They were going door to door in those apartments. They collected DNA from the neighbors. They were asking for voluntary. We know that some of the neighbors went in there and gave it. So as far as like the other DNA, I think that they were able to explain why it was in there, is my guess.
What about the 2 unknown sources of DNA that is stated in Ann Taylor's motion? Do you think that that is interesting? Because it says within the home that the victims were found. A lot of people jump to the conclusion that it was where the victims were found, versus I perceive that as within the home, and within the home is where the victims were found. So we don't know specifically, but I don't think it's unusual that there's going to be a bunch of unknown male sources, because maybe it's just not strong enough to be able to identify it, but that was a party house. People were coming and going left and right. But there's a lot of people who are hung up specifically on that. So what are your thoughts with it?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure somebody will, but didn't they have like 150 people in the house the night before?
So I struggle with that one, because it was as far as the evidence I've seen, it was a much smaller get together and gathering. Like, I've seen a few photos from it, and it does not seem like 150 people. Think about when this happened. There were internet sleuths going crazy looking on social media. If there was a 150 person party, there would be evidence of it. And the first time we had heard of that, I think it was Keith Morrison in Dateline, the Dateline episode, who said it. And we were like, what? Like, how would we not have known that? Because that's a huge, massive piece in the timeline. And the only evidence I've seen is that there were people at the house, but nothing like 150 person.
Well, that's not what it says, though. It says, I'm not talking to you. I was looking at the comments. It doesn't say only 2 other DNA. It says 2 unknown.
Right.
I'm assuming that they knew who a lot of I'm sure they found a lot of DNA in there. And I guarantee you that they were looking at alibis, phones. I heard for certain that they were downloading all kinds of people's phones
Really?
and checking cameras. Yeah.
Mhm.
So they investigate a lot more people than I think we realize, and I think that maybe those are two that they couldn't place with someone. That'll be interesting. But maybe, yeah, there were two that they couldn't match with anyone. But then again, you go back to all of the other corroborating evidence that he has to answer for, Like, why were you
Mhm.
leaving your house at the exact time and turning off your phone?
Right.
Where were you caught on camera? And I think there's going to be so much more footage that we have no idea is coming.
A lot, because even with the
Mhm.
Linda Lane footage leak, and then we have a still shot from 11/12,
God.
there's maneuvers stated on that PCA that isn't in the Linda Lane. It
Yep.
refers to the unsuccessful parking job in front of the King Road house. That is caught on camera, yet we do not see that in the Linda Lane. And 11/12 doesn't face that direction. It faces the King and Queen intersection. So there's another camera there. And also he's caught on Walenta Drive. So the question is what? Because people have taken this Linda Lane footage and they're like, you can't even see that that's an Elantra. That's not enough. It's not all they have. They have,
Right.
like, this was leaked. We're not even supposed to have this as it is already.
Yep.
But that's just not what they're going off of. It's going to be collectively and all together in totality. They put together the timeline and his movements and things like that. So it just bothers me because people take that as just gold, like that's it. This isn't enough, things like that. But
No, I think, well, yeah, when just like you just brought up the 3-point turn, that's on a different camera. So, and we don't know. And I guarantee you, I mean, of course, there's rumors. There's been rumors since the beginning that they have, someone in all black running out, blah, blah, blah. But I think that there's going to be a lot more footage. It's more damning, probably with his plate, probably stuff that can't really be argued, would be my guess. So
I don't see how they can't have his plate
mm-mm.
caught somewhere along his journey, somewhere, because I have Willie in the chat and he always argues with me that they don't have his plate. If they had his plate, I think it's because the way it went down and the inaccuracy as far as the year of the Hyundai. So that just fueled all the conspiracy that if they had his plate, at the time that the PCA was written, it was still an active and open investigation and they were learning in real time. I can't tell you why they may not have, but even if they caught the plate and had his plate number, that's still not enough, because as soon as you arrest someone, that clock starts to tick. So they'd rather collect and wait for the DNA to get back, wait for the phone records to get back before they make an arrest. But I could not imagine, and I say it all the time, red light cameras, speeding cameras, my car could be filthy with snow covering half my plate. They'll still get it. They'll have a clear image. Now, granted, he only had one plate, so maybe certain cameras may not pick up on it, but I truly believe they have a camera at some point catching him with his plate.
Right. And I think that's a good point. People are going like just diehard off this PCA. That was back in January, the first week of January that came out. There's probably a boatload more of stuff that we have no idea. And because of the gag order, we aren't going to know until October, right? That's why I'm dying for the trial, because I really think we are going to be blown away with some of the stuff that comes out.
Mm-hmm. How did you feel, though, when it came out that there was a total lack of DNA? Like, what did you anticipate seeing as far as DNA versus what it's being portrayed as so far?
I was so convinced that the hairs that they found were going to be theirs.
Yeah.
I still don't know how I feel about that statement, though. I don't know if I believe it, because I know that I don't know how to take, because that statement can be interpreted in a couple different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I believe there's no evidence whatsoever. Did it say no? It said no DNA evidence.
Total lack of DNA were the exact words. And here, I'll pull up just so I could refer back to it perfectly. Okay. So it says, no matter what came first, the car or the genetic genealogy, the investigation has provided precious little. There is no connection between Mr. Koberger and the victims. There is no explanation for the total lack of DNA evidence from the victims in Mr. Koberger's apartment, office, home, or vehicle.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. I wonder if there's a different kind of evidence. I don't know. We never know. Okay, let's think outside the box though, because I feel like we're all kind of like stuck on the same things. What if they have him, looking her up for 2 months? What if there's so much we don't know. What if they have him on camera following her around on campus? There's so many things that we don't know. I feel like they do have a lot to be this confident and be going after the death penalty. I think they have a very strong case. I think that the reason people are confused is they didn't give us much at all. And I
Right.
can see how that's confusing. And you couple that with the fact that there's some weird parts about this case that we need to learn about as far as the
Like what?
timelines and stuff. Well, I mean, the timeline is
Mm-hmm.
crazy. And then the whole timeline from after the murders till noon. And I think once we hear what happened, we'll be like, oh, okay.
Right.
But sitting here now, it's really um just one of the most baffling things I think about this case. And unfortunately, that's opened the door to a lot of, whatever you want to call that, blaming people
Speculation,
for
theories,
yeah,
conspiracies.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people need to hold off because I think once we, like I said, the trials, I think we're going to hear and understand the bigger picture better. But yeah,
Because we also have Ann Taylor, who used an interesting choice of words when she said that the sheath was placed. People went crazy with that it was planted. I don't think placed is synonymous with planted. I think she did that for a reason. What's
mhm.
your thoughts on that?
I agree that she did that for a reason. And I do think that she plays word games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm taking that other thing with a grain of salt about the no evidence because she's done this before where she has very tricky wording. She's good at what she does, which is good in a death penalty case. He deserves to have the best representation. And I
Right.
do think, I mean he should. But yeah, I don't know what I believe at this point that she's putting out there. I just don't.
The 8-hour time gap. What's your thoughts with it?
I don't know. That is the one thing that I've spent so much time thinking about. I can't think of anything else besides, they were partying that night. God knows like what had gone on or whatever. I don't know. Maybe they weren't in the right state of mind. Maybe that house is really loud all the time. I brought this up in my Patreon, but I used to live in a house in college with 5 girls for a short time. And you didn't know who was coming in that house. And people were up and down all night. And it wouldn't be that weird to hear people screaming or whatever in the middle of the night. Just depends. There are parties all over the place. So we don't know. Maybe she was desensitized. Maybe she had earbuds in. Maybe she did go into shock and just sat there and was kind of in denial. I don't know.
I struggle with that because then the friends were okay. So if she didn't think anything of it, I would have anticipated her to go back to sleep and then naturally she would have gotten up to use the restroom, went to go get a glass of water, and she would have stumbled upon the bodies naturally. But that's not what happened. What happened was friends were somehow summoned, and that is how it came about. So clearly something was causing her not to go out and look on her own. I mean, we don't technically know if she ever left the room or not, but if we're going according to what Chrissy relayed to a YouTube creator who related to us, was that it was Ethan's best friend who was summoned, and the door was blocked, not locked, blocked. And when it's unclear if Dylan or Bethany ever left their rooms, if they were in the same room, we don't know. But it took Ethan's best friend pushing the door open and peering his head in enough to see that what was going on. And it was Ethan's body that was up against the door, hence why it was blocked. And that is why I think they left out, Ethan is the only one they left out specifically in the PCA of where his body was. And I think that's because he was moved. And I don't think that they wanted to get hung up on like a technicality of stating where his body was, because was that originally where his body was? Even if it's moved a couple of inches, who knows?
That's a really good theory.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would make sense to me. Yeah. I think that's definitely possible. That's interesting. I haven't thought about that before, but yeah, I think that makes sense. And we don't know. I mean, if you guys look at the 3D, replica of the house, and you go and you press this, I don't know, you can make it in a way so it has the actual nighttime vision. I don't know if you've been in there and seen that.
In
And
the virtual tour,
yeah, you
there's
can
a
go
nighttime
into,
vision. Oh,
yeah, and it's cool. I put it in my last video because, or maybe it was 2 ago, I don't remember, but I wanted people to see how dark it actually was, because if you go in there, you can go into Dylan's room and you can actually flip the light off. And then it opens the door
oh.
and it'll say Dylan's view of what she would have seen that night. And she sees a piece of this hallway and a piece of the kitchen. The lighting is terrible. There's a
Really?
little bit of a glow from the neon sign. Other than that, it's really dark. So she didn't say she saw a guy in black wearing, carrying a knife. So maybe she just saw a guy leaving wearing black and didn't think, I don't know, didn't realize, who's going to think it's a murderer?
Well, I see, that is where I do get hung up though, because the noises that she heard, she got physically up 3 times, okay?
Yeah.
Within a 10-minute period.
Mhm.
So if you're hearing those type of concerning noises enough for you to physically get up and go look, I feel like you're on guard. And if the last thing you saw was someone walking out, a figure clad in black, which aren't her words aren't quoted as that. Um, that would be concerning, because the last thing you heard was your perception of cries, whimpers, there's someone here. And it states in the PCA that it was based off of Dylan and Bethany's phone records that they were able to determine the time that the murders likely occurred. So I want to know, well, was Dylan or Bethany messaging? Like, did she message any of the roommates saying, hey, what's going on? Like, who was that? But according to Chrissy, she only has access to phone calls, not text messages, just incoming and outgoing calls. And there was no incoming call to Kaylee's phone from Dylan around 4 a.m. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no text. That doesn't mean that there's no like Snapchat call maybe or something like that. But that's weird to me. Like, it's just weird to me because, again, how do you jump from what you last saw to friends summoned, but nowhere in between? They don't believe upstairs was ever disturbed. So even if you couldn't get that door open, you wouldn't go upstairs to check on the other roommates or anything like that. And when I say this, I don't think she had any involvement or anything like that, versus, geez, there's such missing pieces and it may all come together, come trial, but it's just, I can't think of anything that even makes sense.
The only thing I could think of other than that would be that people always talk about fight or flight. And I don't know, I'm sure if some people in chat have been in a situation where they go into fight or flight. I have. There's a third option, which is you just freeze and you can't function or think or form a sentence or even scream. And some people's natural instinct is that option. And I mean, I've been in that myself where when you freeze like that, you can't move, you can't talk, you can't think. Maybe she could shut her door and lock it, and maybe she curled up in a ball for 8 hours. I don't know. And especially, we don't know if there's previous trauma with her, but if there's any previous trauma with her, which I've heard rumors and I have no idea, it's none of my business, that could also explain reactions being like that. So I don't know. I don't think she has any involvement. I do question the timeline. And if she got up out of bed, like you said, 3 times, that's something.
Within 10 minutes. Yeah. I'm like, damn, that means you're on high alert.
I don't think it's really fair for us to judge, because unless we're in that situation, I do know that, like, I've been in situations where maybe people would run or do this and I freeze. So it's possible, in my opinion, that she just froze.
So is this the one that you said you could see at the time? Okay, hold on. Let me get up.
I love this. I go on this all the time.
It's so good.
They did such a great job on this.
Okay.
Yes. So we go.
Is it the light switch?
Oh, wait. Are you in Xana's room?
Oh, I am in Xana's room. I'm going to Dylan's room.
Yeah.
All right.
Go to Dylan's, and then there's going to be, I'll show you when you get there. I played for this so long. I thought that was so interesting.
Oh, I haven't seen this yet.
dark that is. So if you actually scroll around, it'll say this is her view that night and it shows you.
Wow. Okay, but see, okay, but here's my thing. So you see the way that the door opens, right?
Mm-hmm.
As if Brian is approaching from this direction to pass through to get out to the slider door. Most people sleep with either some type of nightlight, maybe your phone, maybe your TV. So yeah, the whole house would be dark. But see, I don't know, because when you're living with that many roommates, I can imagine your room is where you control what you control. But
Mm-hmm.
are the common areas, who's shutting it off, who's shutting things down, like, to where it would be, like if we live in a home, we're going to shut everything down, then go to bed. But when you're with that many young kids, who's going and shutting down all the lights? So I don't even know, were all the lights off at that time? But if she saw him and her door was even cracked open and she had any type of light source, it would have illuminated to where I would imagine he would see her, because it's a straight shot that he would have to pass her.
Here's my theory on that. And I'm going to pull up Ted Bundy. And I know people that follow my channel like, oh my God, here she goes with Ted Bundy again. But when he broke into the Chi Omega house in Florida, and there were a lot of women in there all sleeping at the same time. So it was even a bigger risk than this, right? He goes in, he tries to kill 4 women all at the same time. People hear thuds, by the way, because they were sharing walls. People heard these like loud thuds and moans and kind of laid there like, what's going on? But they weren't sure. So they just kind of thought maybe they were, dreaming or in and out of sleep. And he was out of there super fast. And as he was leaving, he talks about this in an interview. He says he was in a disassociative state because what he had just done, he was like in a frenzy. He was biting them, beating them with, it was graphic. So anyway, he leaves, and there's a witness named Nita Neary who was coming home. It was 3 something a.m. And she watched him. She saw him dead on leaving. He went right past her. And he said later he never saw her. She ended up being an eyewitness in his trial and helped put him away. But he said he was in tunnel vision, like disassociative state. And maybe Brian was in some kind of frenzy. You know what I mean? Maybe he was in his own fight or flight. I don't know. It's just a theory.
Well, especially if Zen and Ethan were not planned. Again, you really have no perception of time when your adrenaline is rushing like that. So if we're, playing devil's advocate here and playing that one person, and thank you, Just Larry. So good to see you, by the way. And thank you, Esther.
Hey,
If we're playing devil's advocate and saying that maybe just one person was the target and he only intended to kill one, then he just killed 3 unexpectedly. I could imagine your energy, you would have been low on energy. Now, granted, again, adrenaline going, so you get a bunch of energy, but I'm sure he would have been like, yo, how much time just passed? How loud was that? If we're going by what Steve said there was a struggle on that second floor, and that there was a lot of evidence left behind. And I believe that, especially with what's caught on the neighboring audio. And I just think that when he went to walk out, I think he did see Dylan. He made eye contact with her, but it was just like, I gotta go. I think he perceived 911 is definitely going to be called, because if there was things knocked around, if there was a struggle, if there was a lot of noises, even if he saw her, what was he going to do? If he perceived 911 to already been called, he's not going to stick around and wait for 911 to come, like for the cops to come to kill Dylan. I think at that point he was just like, which is more of a reason why I think he returned back the next morning, because he fully anticipated cops who have already been there.
I mean, it's definitely possible because, you have to think, I think it's crazy too. Back in the day, people cut your phone lines or whatever when they did murders, but all of these students had cell phones. It just kind of shows you how the element of surprise was there. I don't think they even had time think if someone's attacking you, you're not going to have time to go get your phone and do that. So I think it was very fast. Your theory could be totally right. I think about that other case, and I think it's possible he didn't see her. But people are saying in comments, and you're right. For her to see his eyebrows, if that is representative of the light that was there, I don't see how she could have seen his eyebrows. So I'm guessing there was more light than that.
Right. And thank you, Ms. Brazzy 604. And what do you mean, Golf Inspector General? Like, as far as, do I think the neighboring audio is real? Are you referring to the Linda Lane, or are you referring to 1112? Because 1112, we don't have the audio. Like, if, in reference to the PCA, if you're referring to Linda Lane, I think the organic version of the audio is there, but things have been manipulated within it. I'm not sure which one you're referring to. Yeah, Crime Sleuthin says Christmas lights string in the living room. Well, and that's what I'm saying. Okay, so like they all came back at different times, right? It's Saturday night, they're drinking. We know in our homes whose job it is to shut it down, right? If you don't shut down your lights and lock all the doors, nobody's going to. But when you're living, and granted, I've never lived, like with a bunch of roommates or in a sorority, anything like that. Am I to believe that somebody walked around and shut everything down and locked everything up? Or were you just responsible for your own individual room? And there's a good chance the kitchen light may have been on, or the common room light might have been on. I don't know.
I mean, it's definitely possible. I was under the impression that like the next night when I know Fox got a lot of really good pictures of the house. I don't think they really messed with much. You could see Kaylee's screen on, you could see some things like that, and maybe that was more representative of how many. It was partially lit up. I mean, it wasn't completely dark. That's for
Right.
sure.
So do you believe he entered in through the slider and also exited through the slider?
I do. I think as far as, again, I know there's a lot of discussion around the window, but to me that's just
And the
riskier. I think that if it's unlocked, maybe he's going to try it, and that was option 2. But if it's unlocked, yeah, I think that makes the most sense to sneak in and sneak out. And who knows, maybe he left it open. I don't know.
That's what apparently, like, yeah, that's what. And again, I keep referring back to the Chrissy interview, but because she's better than just speculating, in my opinion. But there was something said that they believe that the door may have just always been left open. And that would make sense because we don't know that there isn't blood transfer. But if we're going by what we could see with our naked eye through photos, I didn't see any blood transfer on the slider door or even the patio. And that was peculiar to me because I would anticipate seeing that. And it would make a lot more sense, though, if he left it open on his way in and then he just walked right out after and never even shut it behind him. Then there wouldn't be any blood transfer on that door. But it would even make it harder for me to believe with Dylan that it was cold and she was right there. And so wouldn't the temperature drop also be like, oh, what's going on, man? It would have brought in a really big breeze. And welcome, Barb, and thank you, Michelle. And I think because I'm sharing my screen, I'm becoming laggy, like. But
I mean, that's possible that he left it open, but yeah, I would think that the temperature would drop because it was like what 25 degrees that night, I think, something like that. So yeah, I would think it would get colder, but I don't know. The whole thing is interesting. Again, though, he's highly intelligent. He knows what he's doing. He's not just your average person. I don't know.
What do you think? All right. What do you think of Papa Rogers?
I've gone back and forth on that. So they said, right, it was on like Dateline. They said that was him, but we've never heard that confirmed by the police. Yeah.
I don't think it's him.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sorry, I'm like distracted with comments.
No, absolutely.
Very interesting. So, yeah, I don't know.
I'm more inclined to believe that it's, if anybody, it would be a leak from law enforcement, possibly to bait him. But I don't know how I feel about that with Brian, because everyone's like, okay, he knew it was a sheath. He knew that there was a sheath before that was announced. Wolfie mentioned to me, well, if they know, what knife they have, he probably left the sheath. And I know he knew other things, But has anyone paid attention to all the things he got wrong too? You know, like, because
Mhm.
when you want it to be something, you're going to see it, you know, but I don't like Grant again, it's the dueling profiles. It's that black and white. He's
Yeah.
so smart, he's so educated. He did all of this, you know, he's messing with law enforcement now. And then he was sloppy. He left the sheath. He returned it, you know, with the phone. He was driving his own car. And so it depends on which face of Brian I'm speculating with. If he's really, really smart, okay. I don't believe it's him. If he's really, really dumb, then okay, maybe he was doing it with the Papa Rogers account. I don't know.
Well, a lot of killers, though, especially if he does think he's smarter than everyone else, and we keep hearing things from his PhD classmates that really kind of indicate his personality as needing to be superior and the smartest one in the room. If that's the case, he may not be able to help it. He may be so pleased with himself that he has to. I mean, so many killers have done that. Zodiac, BTK, they toy with the cops, even though it puts them in a position where they're more likely to get arrested. Uh, it's possible. I don't know. I could go either way. Someone just said that in comments. I could go either way too. I could believe it was a cop, maybe. I could believe it was him, maybe, or it might just be someone who's guessing and trying to mess with people. I'm open to anything on that, really.
Right.
Um,
Thank
yeah.
you, Anyanka. What do you think
Whoever.
about the go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I was just commenting back that someone said that too. That sometimes they're just compelled to rub in how smart they are. I totally
Yeah.
agree.
And there was also the post, I think it was Reddit, that said the killer is living in shithole Pennsylvania or something like that.
Really? I didn't hear that part.
Oh yeah. And so, but who knows, you know, yeah, it's weird, but
Huh.
I don't know. I'll find the post. Shay, if you're in here, can you send me that post so I could pull it up? And that was an interesting thing, but all right. I don't know.
That's really interesting.
Mhm.
I've never seen that.
What issues do you think it's going to pose as far as friends being summoned prior than law enforcement?
I think they're gonna try to chalk it up to. I think they're gonna try to. Sorry, my dog's going crazy. Chalk it up to, you know, their ages. They didn't know what to do. They were scared, and I don't know. It's interesting. So we know that for a fact that they. I mean, 100%. I mean, I know they summoned her boyfriend, right? And then they
We
were
don't
supposed to meet.
know who.
Oh.
We don't know who. If we're going by, there was, all right, so we know from the initial press conference that friends were summoned prior to 911 being called, and that the 911 call was placed from one of the surviving roommates' phones from within the residence. And then we had Ashley Banfield along the line come out, and she had a source that said it was Ethan's best friend, Hunter. That was one of the people, but she also said that he's the one who called 911 and that he performed CPR. No, I'm not. No, he checked up for a pulse. And then months down the line, more recently, Chrissy did an interview with the Drunk Turkey show, and she confirmed that it was Ethan's best friend, that he was summoned. I don't know specifically why, but the door was blocked, and that he pushed the door open, peered his head in enough to see what was going on, and he screamed, "Get the F out," and to call 911. And so it's unclear how then he would have gotten one of the surviving roommates' phone to make the 911 call. But that directly contradicts what Steve had stated earlier on, because right after that PCA dropped and we found out that, wait a second, both the roommates weren't sleeping on the first floor, and you know, because that's what they said in the press conference, that not only were they both not on the first floor, Dylan was on the second floor, and she's an eyewitness. She can put someone in there. Steve came out, and in an article he said, and this is not verbatim, but something along the lines of, you have to remember, after these girls witnessed what they saw, they went running out the house. One passed out, and one was hyperventilating so much to the point where she couldn't properly relay to the 911 dispatcher what was going on. That can't be true. And when I say that, that's, you know, I'm not blaming Steve whatsoever, because poor, you know, they're dealing with not having open communication with law enforcement, and then the conspiracy and the crazies going around. And I'm sure that they're getting told a million and one things. But the point is that it does not align with what law enforcement stated, that it was from friends were summoned. So it's not like you found the bodies and went running out that house. The 911 call was on a surviving roommate's phone, but it was not one of the roommates, and it was from within the residence. So it's like, why were friends summoned to begin with? That's what I want to know. Even if I could make sense of how much time elapsed, it's like there was something wrong enough for you to have to summon friends. And I think that it's going to be, a defense is going to go at that hard, very hard, that everything's been tainted. And I think they're going to come down on Dylan really, really tough. And, but I just have so many questions surrounding it, and I don't understand. And I want to know how many friends were summoned, how many people went through this crime scene.
I think that those are excellent points, and I think that is going to be hard to explain. I mean, your instinct is to immediately call 911. So I do think that it's really strange that I mean, no matter how much in shock or how scared you are, unless they suspected something was wrong, and so then they want to be safe because of their age and they are kids, they don't want to bring the cops over there in case there is nothing wrong. I don't know.
It's hard.
It's strange. That's why I say when I go, I want to see that part. I think that's going to be the most fascinating part, because that is, like, in my opinion, one of the biggest burning questions of this whole case.
Do you think it could potentially cause enough reasonable doubt? Oh no, it says your device is not connected. And I'll you guys, at the end, I'll make it to where you guys can ask questions. It's okay. Do you think that it's going to cause enough potential reasonable doubt with the jury?
No. I think that is what you said is spot on. And I think it's going to be something that they go after her for. I absolutely do. But I think that in totality, we're going to be really surprised. I'm telling you, I think that we're going to be really surprised by what they have. I think that they have their guy. I think they have a ton of evidence. I really do.
Yeah.
And I think we've heard like a tiny bit.
Yeah, 51 terabytes.
Yeah, that's a lot.
See, but okay, specifically according to the PCI. So we know with the PCI, they do not want to hand them everything they have. They want to keep it to the bare minimum that they can, but enough to get this warrant granted, to have him arrested. But as far as like the shoe print, the latent shoe print found the second time around, people struggle, and even I struggled for a little bit thinking, if they had something more solid, would they not include it? Like, I would imagine that crime scene, and if we're going off of what Kathy Mabut said, the coroner, that there was, it was messy. And so why would they only include that latent shoe print on the second round of processing? Did they include it only to corroborate Dylan's statements? Because if they had something more solid, wouldn't they include that? Thank you, Carol Claus.
I mean, I think that's another good question. And who knows? I mean, I know people talk about, well, there was no blood trail. I mean, we don't really know. Again, we are assuming things off of a tiny amount of evidence. And I now see, I mean, we can all see why they're holding back and why there is a gag order. And I really do think we're going to have these gag orders on more and more high profile cases to come. I think this is the way they're going to have to do it, because look how nuts, the internet blows up. There's all kinds of theories and stuff like that. But I really don't think we know even a fraction. I don't.
I don't either. It's, yeah, I don't know, man. It's every time I feel like I always say it's like I'm trying to get to 50, right? You could have multiple equations that equal 50. You could have 25 plus 25. You could have 40 plus 10. But every equation I go with, I'm either hitting 49 or I'm hitting 51. I could never hit 50. There's always something that is off. And do you think it's possible that maybe there isn't as much blood spatter or blood evidence or DNA than we anticipate to see with a quadruple homicide of this magnitude. We know that from the exterior of the home, we have this horrific image that really indicates what the inside would look like, as far as what appears to be blood dripping out, and everybody's struggling as far as no DNA, no DNA, no DNA. And granted, we don't know all the specifics, but do you think it's possible that maybe it's just not as bloody as we all believe it is?
I've thought about that, but then I keep going back to something that one of the cops said on Dateline, where they said, but he probably meant when he went into the room, and these are investigators, but he did make a comment that it was overpowering, that he could smell it when he opened the door. Not to be graphic, but that was a direct statement from the investigator, and that really stayed with me. But he probably meant in the room. So I think in the rooms it was probably horrific, but maybe there wasn't much out of the rooms. Yeah. But we're not thinking about certain scenarios with what they have and how confident they seem. There could be something like they see him on camera getting out of his car at that exact time. Then they see a black figure go in. Then they hear with that camera, as we know, like the whimpering and a thud and all this. And then maybe they can see the figure go back out, which is a rumor, and get back into that car that's identifiable by that. We don't know what they have, but they could have stuff like that.
Yeah,
We don't know.
absolutely.
So I like to keep an open mind on things, but I really think in this case that they have a lot. I just do.
And the cast, and thank you, Carol Claus, and the cast, people, the I use Alex Cox as the example with how they were able to, it wasn't phone pings, they were able to determine precisely where JJ and Tylee were, based on, I don't know if it was like triangulation, I don't know specifically what they did, but within feet, and even Chad Daybell's phone. And we know Cass is a part of, because in the PTA it's stated. So I'm sure that they're going to have, now I don't know what it is if his phone was off. I'm curious to know if his phone was off on airplane mode, are they still able to pinpoint his exact movements?
I don't think they're going to be. That's what I don't know. Maybe someone in chat knows better than I. From what I've been able to research, I think once his phone was off that it's not pinging anywhere, but maybe I'm wrong.
That's what it it states that when the phone is off or on airplane mode, it's not pinging anymore. And we know that. But with the cast and whatever they do with the magical technology where they're able to really pull, I don't know how that works. And I'm interested to know. This Mama, I was asking if Brian's phone was off or on airplane mode, would they be able to determine, not with pings, but with whatever else they're able to do at all, where his locations were?
I think it's very possible they got the DNA and worked backwards, but if that doesn't mean if the other evidence didn't fit, then they'd have to go back to square one. But it's going to be really hard to argue that he turned his phone off, that he was leaving. Like, we know he hasn't even turned in an alibi. Where was he? He wasn't sleeping. Where was he going? Why was he driving down the middle of nowhere? Why had he driven by the house 11 times? I guess that'd be one of the things you could try to explain away if it was en route, but it doesn't look like it's en route to anywhere.
Right.
You got a lot to overcome that they have.
And you got to show a pattern of behavior, right? It won't be so unusual if that phone was shut off. If they're able to establish, hey, around this time every night his phone shuts off. He shuts his phone off when he goes to bed. So I'm going to be really curious to know if it was unusual and it goes outside of his pattern of behavior. But again, I just can't believe that he would shut the phone off to only return with the phone. That's so sloppy. That's such maybe he was just, like you said, disassociated, right? He went out of his mind, and so he no longer was thinking logically the way he would when he was planning the murders. Everything within that time period may have just become blurred. It's just, but I don't know, man. It's
weird, but killers make mistakes, and I don't know, he might be really book smart, but him actually carrying out his fantasy here just didn't work out the way he thought it was going to, because in his fantasies he's in 100% control, and we all know that real life does not go that way. Stuff gets messed up pretty easily, and then once one thing goes wrong, a chain of things goes wrong, and I just don't think it was like he had it in his head.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, ATS News says, remember early on a neighbor said they hear Brian up late vacuuming and using dish disposal. I do.
Mhm.
I remember that. So going back a little bit to the DoorDash, is there any part of you that A, feels that he was the DoorDash driver, or B, he was the one who sent the DoorDash?
No, I actually don't think either one. I think that, especially once I heard Dana's friends say that this was normal, that I just think there's way too many risks there. And then I don't think he was the DoorDash driver. I think that they're protecting that person's identity, and rightfully so. And I think that they're going to be a major witness in this case, is my personal opinion.
I agree. And thank you, Michelle. For a while, I speculated whether or not he was the one who delivered the DoorDash, not delivered, like sent the DoorDash. Because in the PCA it says Xana received the DoorDash. Does not say she placed the order. It did not. It could go either way. It doesn't mean one way or the other. But I just could not get over that timeline. I could not get over that for 30 minutes he waited. And it would make sense. He's checking it out. He's scoping it out. He wants to make sure there's no activity. And then this unknown vehicle all of a sudden pulls up. And that should have spooked him. That should have been like, oh crap, who is this? Someone's awake. I'm sure he would have. That's why I want to know specifically what time the DoorDash arrived, because he was doing multiple maneuvers. So maybe that DoorDash came and went in because he went around 4 times. And so that DoorDash driver may have come at one of the moments where he wasn't lying in wait. And maybe he didn't even see them. But do you think the DoorDash, the Jack in the Box with Xana's name in one of the photos that we see taken, is the DoorDash from that night?
I've heard conflicting things. I think it makes sense that it would be, but then, maybe she does this every night. Some people are saying, no, that could be another night. Well, it could be, I guess. Definitely, if, the kitchen was kind of messy, but the fact that I don't know. I think that it probably is. And for when, like I said, when her friends were like, no, this is totally normal. This is what she did in the middle of the night. Maybe this is like a nightly routine for her. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and we know that there's only 2 options for DoorDash at that time. It would have been Jack in the Box or Taco Bell. Both were located right across the street from one another. And the latest window it could have gotten out was 2:45 a.m. And with Jack in the Box and Taco Bell, it was about a 58 to 67 minute wait time on a Saturday night at that time. And so it does add up that it was supposed to be around 4 a.m. that would arrive. But if we were to ever believe that Brian was the DoorDash driver, which I don't, I just can't. But that would mean that because he was home, he was at his apartment, so he was home. That means he would have had to turn it on, become eligible for rides, and then take only one ride. He would have only had enough time for one ride because 2:45 was the latest window and it shuts down. And that would throw out the idea of it was premeditated, because how would he be able to predict that they would order DoorDash? You can't do that.
No.
But
And if you look at that,
Mhm.
oh, sorry, let me cut you off. If you look at that footage, the late footage, it does look like on that last turn that and it doesn't mean it's a DoorDash driver, but it does look like he's kind of hanging back whilst another car, you can see the headlights and you can hear another car leaving. And that would be like right at like 4:03 or something, I believe it is.
Which is a minute before Brian is last seen entering there. Where do you think he parked?
I don't know. And so far, I feel like he parked in that little lot. Where you could, I don't know how to explain where it is, but it's like a little lot that you can kind of walk down. And I think he came back through the woods and in through the back door.
Let me show you.
Behind the apartments. Yeah, somewhere behind.
Okay. So if we're going by, all right, you tell me where you thought.
Trying to get my bearings. This whole
Queen Road
area is really
Apartments.
confusing too, because where's Linda? Linda's over to the right and back.
Linda Lane is to the right.
Where
So
we saw him
right
turn
here
around.
is the King Road house. When we see the Linda Lane footage that we see is from this parking lot. So when you see him whip around, it's over here and he's going around.
I think that's where. Okay, keep going right there.
Yep, that's where
I
I
think
think.
that's where he parked. And then look, you can come right down those woods, totally
Mhm.
concealed, right
Yep.
into the back door.
And it's a lot closer than people. Oh, thank you, that Chrissy. That was really kind of you. Thank you so much.
Hey, Chrissy.
I think because, all right, again, we're playing devil's advocate and we're going to say that Linda Lane footage is legit. I do believe that the visuals are legit. And again, I believe that there is some organic audio underneath it, but then there's other that have been manipulated. But
Mhm.
it's completely accurate to the PCA. So you see him entering this area and he does a complete loop around. I know it looks like trees, but it is a complete loop around.
Yep.
And when you come right over to here, that's right in that back door. And they say that the balcony it's like jumping distance. Like it is so close. And if their lights were on, you could see right through.
Yep.
And between each pass, so he would go out, come back around out of Walenta Drive, and he was doing
Mhm.
circles. And so then he kept coming into frame. And what I think he was doing, because there's like 8 minutes between 11 minutes, there was gaps between his maneuvers. And I think he was just chilling here for a while. But if we're going by the PCA, so it says that he's coming east down Queen Road. He stops in front of the 500 Queen Road apartments, comes back up. He unsuccessfully parks in front of 1122.
Mhm.
Then he comes back out to the King and Queen Road intersection, makes a 3-point turn, and he goes back east towards Queen. So I think at around 404, when we see him last come in around here, I think what he did, because he did this loop 3 times before, is he
Mhm.
came right over here and parked right here. He went out in, made it through the back, and he came right back. And that is why we then see him booking it at 420 right
Mhm.
out of here, and then last seen on Walenta Drive.
Mhm. I think that's exactly what happened, and I think there's probably multiple cameras on that track that you just did
Yes.
that we are not aware of that caught everything.
There has to be, because again, this is 1112 right here, and the 1112 is facing out towards King Road. So the 1112 was able to capture his 3-point turn right here at the intersection going back down. We have the Linda Lane, which captures right here, so we could see his maneuvers. But guess what? There's something that captures right here, his unsuccessful parking attempt and things like that. And so we don't know what camera that is. So when you're looking at all this, and also on Walenta Drive and his entire route from there, back and forth. So what's the likelihood that not one camera managed to get a clear shot of his vehicle or license plate?
Yeah. Oh, I that's what I'm saying. I absolutely agree. I think that they have plenty of camera footage, and the Linda Lane one was like the worst one. God, people kept
Right.
leaving comments under my video like, well, if this is what they have, give me a break.
Yes.
What
Oh my
makes
God.
anyone think that is the evidence they have?
Exactly. Speaking of the Linda Lane footage, there has been a lot of conspiracies and misinformation surrounding this case. Thinking of it in a timeline format, I think the first really big thing we heard going around was Kim WSU Mom. Are you familiar with Kim WSU Mom?
Kind of.
Kim WSU Mom was the one who claimed that she has 2 children who go to WSU, and she seems to be legit as far as who she is and her children attending WSU at the time. And one of her children did follow one of the victims on social media. But what she's claiming occurred is basically that her daughter and friends were made aware that they were killed prior to 911 being called early in the morning around 10 a.m. And that started fueling a bunch of speculation of, what do you mean? How would these, first we have friends summoned to the residence prior to 911 being called. And then we have now that friends were notified hours before 911 being called. And so it really started driving all of this dark speculation surrounding the roommates. Did they help clean? Did they, and then she came out with the drugs, and this drug, this house was kind of a drug hub, and that there was overdoses and this and like the whole timeline is wrong. So that is pretty much, if I'm trying to think back in timeline order, the first really big thing. And I'm sure you've heard that this house is the drug hub. There's been a lot of misinformation surrounding that.
Yeah, and I've seen some of the most recent ones too, but I don't even know where to start with that. So, and there's been a ton of stuff about drugs. I guess I've got a lot of questions on that. Like, for instance, this is college. Who knows what they did or didn't do? A lot of college students, party and do whatever. What does that have to do with a guy breaking in and slashing them all to death in their sleep?
Exactly.
Because they had parties with some drugs there, allegedly, if that even happened. I don't understand why that makes one bit of difference with what happened that night.
Right.
And that has rubbed me the wrong way from day one. And
Right.
that's just my opinions. These are mine. I don't know if to each his own, but I think that it's this, victim bashing. They're not here to defend themselves. And I do find it odd that people are willing to go after the victims when they don't know Brian at all. And from what we do know from his own friends, from his own schoolmates, I mean, for one thing, he's being investigated for a burglary of a girl that he went to school with, where he allegedly was spying on her through security cams. But nobody talks about that. But we hear that there could potentially be drugs at a college party house, and that pertains how? All To me, it's intentional to degrade the victims and make it somehow be their fault. And we've seen that before. I don't play that game. I don't like it at all.
Well, and I think that it's very plausible that drugs were used recreationally at these that's not out of the realm of possibilities.
Right.
She does, Scott. She has a lot of class for you too. But it's not out of the realm of possibilities that at some point that there were drugs at this home. Now, where I can get on board with is drugs were directly related to these killings, because then we have the even lower side of YouTube, as I would put it, who had an interview with like a drug kingpin, and they are saying that these drugs happened because the owner of the Mad Greeks run, and again, this is not legit, I'm just repeating what they're claiming. The owner of the Mad Greeks run this international drug organization, and that Xana and Maddie, were within this, and they had flushed a large amount of drugs down the toilet, which ultimately resulted in their killings. And really what made people even believe this is because of Emma Bailey. So are you familiar with the Emma Bailey situation?
Kind of. A little. I mean, I know the basics.
Mm-hmm.
The very basics.
Emma Bailey is a student, and her body cam footage came out of her getting a DUI. And yeah, she may have some criminal history as far as drug involvement. And then they found one of the old noise complaints from 11/22, and it does appear to be Emma in the background. She has the same bandana, same whatever. And so people looked at that, and they all of a sudden said, that's it, and not only was this a drug hub, they started accusing Emma and I don't know if it's her boyfriend or associate, whatever, of being not only involved, being the murders, which I am really against, to sit there and name people's first and last names as being involved in this quadruple homicide, because everybody remembers the accusation. Nobody remembers the retraction. If we
Right.
go in timeline format, there have been, at first it was Jack, then it was the other Jack, then it was this and that. It just one after another. And I don't know, listen, there could be a good chance that maybe there was drugs, maybe Emma even was the one who supplied it. That does not mean, though, that she was involved in these murders. And I don't know how people jump from A to Z so quickly without anything substantial to really back it up, and they are dragging so many people's names through the dirt, even the victims themselves, to sit there and claim that they are running, that they were within this drug organization. And the families have spoken out, and like Chrissy said that she didn't believe her daughter was involved in anything more than what may be legal, and granted, of course, do kids always tell their parents? No, but you could tell, and not to like, you could tell they were functioning, they were working, they were really good students. And so the likelihood that they were into such heavy, dark drugs, something like an international drug organization, I do not think it's likely, but people have really, really run far with that speculation.
I think that's really, really reckless because, again, I went to college. I was in a party house for a while. How many people in their teens or 20s? I mean, and I don't even know what, and it doesn't really matter what recreational drugs, but partied and made dumb decisions. And that has nothing to do with these murders. I mean, let's look at the patterns here. Okay. First, I heard some, and I don't know all of them. So I only know like the most outrageous ones that I would catch wind of.
Please,
but we had, we had OnlyFans, right?
Yeah.
Who cares? And I don't believe that. But if so, who cares? And then we had the drug thing, and that's been big. And then I just saw like a recent one that was even worse in the past 48 hours, accusing, Kaylee and Maddie, and I don't know who else of, I don't even want to say it out loud, but it was disgusting. It's like, whatever they were doing, sugar babies or whatever. Let's look at the pattern here. All of these conspiracies that are put out are shaming the victims. Why? I mean, and how would some random YouTubers know anything like that about these victims? And again, let's pretend all of that was true, which I don't think it is. How does that pertain to these murders at all?
Exactly.
Unless you're implying they had it coming.
Right. Does that devalue their life? Does it minimize it? Like, I don't even care if they were part of an international drug organization, which I do not believe. Yeah. But what does that mean? Does the person who did this no longer responsible? But people, and what I notice is that the people who are saying this type of stuff are very consistent as far as the cases. So I see it as supply and demand, right? There's always going to be a demand for the opposition. Whether you agree with it or not, you're going to tune in. And I think that certain channels take advantage of that, right? When you see the same creator constantly sticking up for the murderer, I think that's a pattern of behavior. And it's not so much because they believe it versus there's a demand for it. And if you're not someone who really cares about morals and the truth and justice for these victims versus what's going to get me clicks and views, that's what they're going to go with, because they don't care about their own credibility either. You're going to watch it even if you're just for shock value. No way did they just say that. Yep. Or you're interested or you completely disagree. You're still going to click, and that's giving that creator exactly what they're looking for. You have the Joseph Morrises, right? Joseph Morris literally fabricated the audio of allegedly the murders caught, on tape and released it. He took it from a real DV incident, and then he also completely edited an actual article to incorporate what he wanted, and he released that. And guess what? You have the families that, even if they're doing everything they want to avoid it, you have people who must send those families everything. Or you have families like the Gonsalveses who may be more on social media trying to help and figure it out. Because if we have these questions, could you imagine how many questions they have? And so they're forced to hear these rumors. They're forced to hear those audios. And for what? For a click, for a view, for a buck. It's really wrong. And so I think that there's a difference between speculating based on fact, having questions while being respectful, versus the creators who are legitimately putting out misinformation for their own benefit.
I think you said that perfectly. I totally agree with you. And Belle Moon, I think it was up there, had a really good comment. This is not like entertainment. These are real people. And can you imagine, like any of us in this chat, imagine being the parent or sister or brother or anyone of someone who died this way, and then the whole world's watching, right? And you have to relive this in October, and it's one of the most violent, terrifying crimes that we've seen. And now you've got to listen to all these people on the internet tell you who your kid is, and kind of like shield Brian and make a million excuses for the evidence that's been found, right? Because they'll argue anything, but then attack the victims with stuff that we don't even know. I mean, at least the stuff with Brian's in the PCA, it's actual evidence, but they'll write that off and then they'll blame the victims with stuff that we have no idea, that they just pull out of the air. That makes no sense to me.
Absolutely.
It's just my opinion. It makes no sense.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And thank you, Brian. Now, regarding the Linda Lane footage, though, are you inclined to believe it's legitimate?
Okay. I think I've thought a lot about this. I think that the visuals are legitimate. I do think that the audio is tampered with, because I think it's really strange that there's these screams that are enhanced or whatever at these specific times. And people jumped all over that. And I don't think releasing that footage had the result that people were hoping for. I think it backfired.
Absolutely. And thank you, Missy Moo. Because now we also have a screenshot from 11/12. Did you see that screenshot?
Kind of. I saw part of your live with that, but maybe if you could explain it a little bit better. I did see.
Okay. Hold on.
I'm not sure the background.
Let me pull it up. Okay. So this is the screenshot. Okay. So this is the screenshot of 11/12 King Road. And I am inclined to believe that this screenshot is legitimate. The reason why is, one, you see the pumpkins. Do you know? Yeah, you know what camera this is on, right? Hold on. Let me pull this up, though. Hold on. Because it'll be easier if I could do a side-by-side comparison. 1 second.
I agree, Richie. I think that it's about the visuals, and that I think the visuals tell the story and they match up perfectly with the PC. I didn't pay attention that much to the audio.
Okay. So if you look at the pumpkins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you also look at which cars are in this parking lot. So allegedly, this is taken the night of the 13th at 1:56 a.m. And if you look at the cars that were in, this is taken later on the 13th. Those are the same exact cars. You see the big pickup truck, the white truck back there. It's the same lineup. And also you can see the 5 pumpkins sitting there, and perfectly in relation to that camera. I'm inclined to believe it's legitimate. Now, here's the thing that I'm struggling with. So with the Linda Lane footage, it was already peculiar enough that this got leaked. It got leaked in its entirety. But it wasn't strange to me that when one of the cameras leaked, that another camera was leaked, because we got both 1330 Linda Lane and 1320 Linda Lane. Mm-hmm. They're both owned by Kane. So it's not like, all right, if one comes out and the other comes out, all right, it's the same person. But now that this screenshot has come out, this is really concerning to me. And it's concerning because this is a completely different place. It's a completely different owner. But this is also the camera that allegedly would have caught the audio of the murders. It also would be the one that caught the 3-point turn in the intersection, because this is the King and Queen Road intersection right here. And so what's crazy to me is that, and here you could see it's in the PCA, it states that it's 50 feet from Xana's room. If you measure where that camera is in relation to Xana's wall, it's 56.8 feet. So I'm trying to figure out, how is this being leaked? Because, okay, I could wrap my head around one person, because allegedly last night we found out that $1,000 was paid to Kane, allegedly, for that footage. But how are they managing to get whoever had access to the 1112 King Road? That's super weird to me. And so a bunch of people are speculating, is it the defense? Is it this? But what's concerning is who it's being leaked out to. It's the channels that are really with Linda Lane, they reached out to a bunch of creators, but if I put it in a timeline format, the farthest I could get back as far as who was reached out first was Sleuthy Goosey. And the person who reached out didn't just reach out claiming, hey, I hear concerning things and I don't know what to do. They reached out with a narrative. They reached out saying that the killer's name is Charlie, that the murders occurred at this time. This is what you could hear. This is whose screams it is. This is what doors within the house were shut. And so, but Sleuthy, I don't think, took the bait. And so all of these creators were sent this, and it's really the creators who are doing all of those conspiracies that we just spoke about a few minutes ago that's leaking it. And so how is this possible? How is this going to affect the trial? I think back to Gannon Stauch and that infamous neighbor video where we saw Letitia returning home, but questioned whether or not you could see Gannon getting out. And that was leaked out before the trial, yet it was still used in trial. But I'm curious to know, because this case is unique and there's such a tight gag order. How is this going to impact the trial? Is this tainting the jury pool? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
I think it's really strange that was leaked. I mean, it's possible what ATS said, that maybe it's photoshopped or the timestamp, but I did wonder that when the footage came out, and I'm sure that law enforcement has all of this, but there is a gag order. So technically, are the people leaking this breaking the gag order and could be brought up on charges? I would think so, honestly.
Yeah, right?
And I think it would be interesting to see who is behind it. It doesn't seem like, I mean, based on where I saw it first, I feel like, I don't know, either someone bought it off them or, I mean, I wondered if it was the defense as well. But I don't think that it went the way, like I said, I don't think it went the way that I wanted it to. Because all it did for me was like lock down exactly what the PCA said. I was like, oh, here matches up with this. And it just kind of convinced me even more.
And I was totally like, all right, Kane, like, even though allegedly Kane is, we saw, an email communication between someone and Kane is claiming that, no, I did not give this out. I didn't even know that we had a copy of it. But there was somebody else who had access to the portal. So unless she did something nefarious with it, okay. But when I was watching the Drunk Turkey show last night, who had a guest on who helped put out the information, she provided a Venmo receipt, I believe it was Venmo, and claimed that $1,000 was paid to Kane to obtain this footage, and that she was reached out to somebody, the same person who reached out to Sleuthy. But when she reached out to Sleuthy, she claimed that she was in fear for her life, that please don't show this to anybody. I don't know what to do. Yet then this person, Claire, was reached out, and I don't even think she lives in this country, and she was asked to leak it. And so it's just so weird with all of this going around. But notice that the screenshot of the timestamp, and again, yes, maybe the timestamp is manipulated. I do believe it is of the 13th, but whether or not it's that specific timestamp, the reason that they're including that timestamp is because if you go to the channels pushing conspiracies, 1:56 a.m. is the time that they claim you could hear the murders occur on that Linda Lane audio. And people also are running, 1:56 a.m. is the same time Olivia stated she saw the rideshare driver dropping off Kaylee and Maddie. And so people are like, well, hey, you can't see the rideshare driver. Listen, 1:56 is an entire minute. also. So just because you don't see 156 45 seconds with the rideshare driver doesn't mean at 156 minute and 2 seconds you don't see them pass by.
Exactly.
But it's concerning because I'm terrified that whoever, given that the originator of this screenshot is a conspiracy channel, is a channel that is pushing the drugs and the timeline of the murders occurring at the wrong, like, that they're going to potentially leak out the audio, the audio of the whimpers and the cries and the thud and Murphy barking, and that's terrifying. And I want to know how did this get out like that?
Wow. I mean, I didn't even think about that part, but yeah, I mean, that could mean they have that part, which is going to be probably critical in the trial. And I don't know, whoever is stupid enough to put that out, I'm sure, I have no doubts. I mean, we'll end up losing cameras and stuff in the trial, but even more importantly, I would think that they would track that person down and have criminal charges. I mean, that is interfering with this investigation. That is directly
Is it?
tampering with this, in my opinion.
So you think that, because I've always been trying to figure out, are you going to get in trouble for this? One, do you think Kane, and just in your opinion, I know it's your opinion, but do you think that he could absolutely get in trouble for leaking this out? Would he be under gag order? How would it work?
I don't know, because it would depend on when it happened, I guess. And I guess we haven't seen any concrete proof of this or receipts necessarily, but that's what I'm guessing. But I don't know. I mean, I would think he shouldn't have done that. You know, I don't know if he could get in trouble. I would think if the judge got pissed enough and if they really thought it was going to impact the trial, that there would be consequences. And but it would depend, I guess, maybe if he did it at the very beginning or did he just recently do it?
As far, I don't, you know what, that's a great question. I don't know when it was obtained, but I want to know why now. Why? Because it's been months and months and months. Yet not only was one drop now, Linda Lane, then we had the screenshot of the, you know, the sunroof with the car and the whole conspiracy around it. It was the wrong car, the wrong time, the wrong street. You guys are crazy if you believe that, hey, within 6 hours of footage that you're not going to see people walking or cars going by. But people made a correlation with the sunroof because originally when Moscow PD came out, they gave us a stock image of the wrong Hyundai. And one image had no sunroof. The other image had another did have a sunroof. And so people are like, this is the car. And it's like, it's being leaked out in a way to intentionally cause
Oh yeah. And the sunroof definitely was. I can't tell you, I had to answer like 150 questions in 48 hours about this freaking sunroof. I was like, if I ever hear that again, but it would cause massive confusion, and I don't blame anyone that was confused. It was put out to be confusing. So all of the subs that thought it was confusing, I totally understand that. That was the whole point, was to confuse people. But that wasn't, and then finally the real like timestamp came out and boom, we find out, oh wait, that's 3 hours before the murders took place. Super manipulative in my opinion. And
right.
it was very confusing to people, and I get that.
Right. And it's like, if you genuinely believe that Brian is innocent, if you genuinely believe that there are others involved, you don't have to manipulate anything, right? Because everything would perfectly line up and show that and prove
Right.
that. And so you have to question when people are cropping things or not showing full context. That really, really bothers me because, like I said, the majority of my coverage now, it's just a debunking narrative. Like, okay, there was the one who said that there was tunnels. Did you hear about the tunnels underneath Moscow?
I did. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there was a video of a creator who went deep into the tunnels underneath Moscow, and is this how the drugs were being moved in and out? Because there's such a huge international drug organization in Moscow. Listen, tunnels underneath cities is not unusual, actually, at all. But they uploaded a video of people moving underneath the tunnels, and they specifically said that you have free reign, you could do whatever you want, and that the same trucks that are getting weighed to move lumber are the same trucks that drugs were being moved in, and this led directly up to the King Road, whatever. Point is that all it took was a minute. I did it on my live. We were able to find the video that he put out, find the article he used for a reference, and showed that he cropped it. He did not include the whole thing, because if you watch the original video, it explained that this was a tour. This was a guided tour of like electrical students, that kids do not have free range to just walk around those tunnels, and that it specifically said that this was a guided tour, that this is what's kept in the tunnels, that they were it said it right there.
Mhm.
And so again, if it's the truth, you don't have to pull that shady stuff. It'll just all line up perfectly. But I cannot stand the creators who are intentional. Like, there's enough weird things surrounding this case without having to do anything. Focus on that.
Yeah.
But to create the conspiracy for what?
Well, I mean, remember, we've seen, and that's what the subs have to understand too. We've seen this before. This ain't our first rodeo, okay? We've seen these patterns before, and the next case that's really big and high profile, it'll happen again and again and again. I mean, who could forget the days of Chris Watts with his magic potions that were given to him so that he killed his family? And there were, sorry, I'll just drop that, but I'm just saying that was one of the plot lines, okay? So I mean, we've seen this so many times, but people are gonna have to be careful, because I think that times are changing and these families can't be too happy with this at all. And they have got other things to worry about right now. But I do agree with what you're saying. You shouldn't have to force a narrative that shows your narrative is BS. All right. If you have to alter timestamps or throw in stuff that doesn't matter, then what are you doing? Aren't we all after the truth and putting things together? Clearly not. But that's why most of us love this and love the true crime, world, because it is really interesting and intriguing, and we want to put the pieces together, but at least do it in the right way with the truth.
Absolutely. Man, just the misinformation chain is really, really bad.
Yeah.
What do you think, as far as, it was interesting timing, the way that these documents were released, because at first we had octillion % that this DNA was a direct match to Brian Kohberger's, and the state. Did I say defense? The state. Then we had the defense come out and say that there is a total lack of DNA and that the sheath was placed. And then we have the state again who says we're going forward with death penalty. So we have two complete opposite end of the spectrum pictures being portrayed here, which that's what we're supposed to have, right? That's their job. But do you think that there's going to be a middle ground? Do you think that no, it's going to be a home run, or no, this is going to be an uphill battle? Like, what are your thoughts with it?
I think that we are kind of seeing how this is going to play out. We know that there was this stay for 37 days or something like that. They're going through all the grand jury documents, but I also think that we're seeing clues that because there's so much evidence, just my opinion, I think that because there is so much evidence that they're going to attack the process. I can't remember who it was that described it as investigating the investigation. They're going to go after the cops and what their reputations are. They're going to go after the labs. And you saw they asked for 6 months of mistakes, not on this case, but any mistakes that lab has made in 6 months on any case, which I understand. They want that. They're going to attack the integrity of finding the DNA and try to put holes in that. They're going to find all kinds of holes, I think, or try to, with how sloppy, quote unquote, the investigation was. Because I think that they're probably, on raw evidence, I think they're probably screwed.
Right. Oh, man. It's, if anybody has any questions, by the way, you could ask. I'll keep an eye out in the chat. The process is very, very important. And thank you, Kim M2. If they left Dylan alive, she could have called. Oh, okay. The cartel. Oh my God. I cannot do the cartel. Again, I love a good conspiracy.
So do I.
I'm a conspiracy channel too. But what I've learned, because I'm still learning, I feel like I learn every day, do not make conspiracies surrounding active current cases. Because there's a lot of times where I was wrong. And once all of the information comes out, it really paints a much clearer picture. But I'm more of an Occam's razor type of person, and that's not always the case, right? But usually,
Right.
the more simpler explanation is normally the right one, and um it's too deep. It's too deep. But I do believe that we are going to be thrown a complete curveball once we get to trial. I don't know
Yep.
in what direction. I don't know if it'll be in Brian's benefit. I don't know if it'll be, oh my God, he's done. He's toast. But all I know is that they have 51 terabytes and they're going for the death
Mhm.
penalty. And I know that there was a lot of public pressure to make an arrest in the beginning, and that was a concern of mine. Oh my God, there was so much public demand and public pressure. They had to make an arrest. But I'll go back to what Quentin Simon, I don't know if it was the sheriff, but it was he during a press conference, he said, it's all of you who are demanding that we basically arrest Leilani now. You guys are going to be the same people who are screaming outrage if she gets off in a month from now because we can't convict her. And so a lot of people have concern because it took 6 weeks to arrest Brian, that if they had his license plate, if they had this, they would have made the arrest immediately. I'm more inclined to believe that, you guys, the arrest is not as important as the conviction. And again, once they made that arrest, that time, that clock, it starts ticking. And I think that they waited and they managed to collect enough evidence to go forward with a conviction. And I think that they have a lot more than we could ever imagine.
I totally agree. And that PCA was just enough probable cause for the arrest. And someone brought this up earlier. They had a like what is it called? The early morning. They had a special kind of search warrant when they went in and broke into his house at, what was it,
Because
3
it
a.m.
was prior to 6 a.m., they had to get a
Right.
special approval. Yeah.
They needed, enough to arrest him while they continued to gather evidence. I just think people are looking at this too, taking it, just for what it is verbatim, that's what they have. And like I said, I don't think that's even 20% of what they have.
Not even 20%. You'd put that number on it.
I swear, I think that we are going to be, and I just do. I think that we're going to get to trial and like, oh my God, they have this, they have this. And my mind has been everywhere. And I have some unpopular theories as well, as far as what he was doing
Tell
leading up
us.
to the murders. Oh, they don't win me. I mean, some people agree with me. A lot of people freak out when I say this, but whatever. I personally think he was practicing. I think he was probably doing that run through. I think he was some of those. I'm predicting that some of those passes by the house are going to be dry runs of the murders, like just trying to time himself or work out a route. I think that he was responsible for Buddy, the dog, getting skinned and filleted. I think that there's so many things that are suspicious about that. And they won't release that police report. They won't talk about it. They know that it was done by a person.
You think
I
Buddy
think
the dog could be affiliated with Brian?
I do.
Oh.
I think that he was practicing, and it was October 21st when that happened, and the owner was told it was a person. I called and asked to get the police report and the body cam, and they told me no, it was open and active, and that I will never get my hands on that report, was the exact from the lady who answered at the sheriff's office. And I thought, for a dog, why can't I have the report? But
Ooh,
she said,
right.
"You're
Good
never."
point.
She actually initially told me to go ahead and online and fill it out, and then I said, "Okay." And then she kind of sat there and goes, "You're never going to get your hands on that report. There's no point in you filling that out." And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I don't know. I mean, and to say that the dog is filleted, and sorry, you guys, to be
Yeah.
graphic, but skinned and filleted, that's odd. And it's one of my team members was pointing out that where that happened was just on the other side of the highway, but equidistant. And it was done at 3 a.m. I don't know. Just a theory. It could be totally wrong.
Do you think Brian acted alone 100%?
Yes.
Okay. Nasa wants to know, do you think, and thank you, Nace, do you both think he will provide an alibi on Monday? If yes, want to take a guess?
That's a great question. oh yeah, I can't forget the rabbit too. Uh, I don't know. Why is it taking? Is this normal for it to take this long to say where the heck you were 8 months ago? I don't know.
He only needs to say it if he's going with an alibi defense. He doesn't need to say it if he isn't going with an alibi defense, you know? But I think that it's very telling if he doesn't have an alibi, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I I don't personally think he will. I think that defense is going to poke holes in prosecution's narrative.
Mm-hmm. I don't think he has an alibi, so it wouldn't surprise me. I just don't think. Yeah, exactly. That's what they said. Sorry. I could go
Yeah.
on about Buddy the dog forever. Okay, I've spent so much time researching this, and I even found some weird stuff. If you really want to go down a rabbit hole,
I'd
I'll
love
send
to
it to
hear it
you.
because, to be fair, like, I never looked into the Buddy the dog stuff because I could easily look at stuff with humans. Believe it or not, when it comes to animals, I can't. Like, my emotions
I know.
are too much. Um, but all I know is that there was the whole conspiracy with Brent Kopaka and Buddy the dog and this collar and the machete, and that was debunked. So I never really looked too much into the correlation between Buddy and potentially the Brian or the killer.
I wondered. I haven't heard of an alibi in any other case actually done quite like this to answer your question, but I started digging because I was so convinced about Buddy, and I was on this kick. Anyone on my team could tell you I was obsessed. So I started digging in Pennsylvania for similar animal crimes, and I found a ton within 20 miles of his house going back 10 years where they were skinned, filleted, put in trash bags. In one case, they found a latex glove laying next to the trash bag, and the police actually allegedly sent the latex glove in for testing, but then it was like there was no other discussion about it. But all of these, I mean, that could be coincidence. There's other people that do that stuff, I guess. But puppies and dogs, it's not like it was strange. And I didn't put it in a video or anything because people's reactions are so, but I mean, I have all of the articles and I have all of the screenshots of everything and the dates, and
Yeah.
it's interesting.
No, I would love to see that. Well, I wouldn't love to see that. I'd hate to see it, but I'd love to see the connection because it's, you know, very few roads I never went down regarding this case, but that one I couldn't. I couldn't. But you know, you have to look at all angles. Anyanka says we went down Buddy rabbit hole, no pun
We
intended.
did. That
Um,
I think that case just separate from Brian upset me so much what was done to that dog. It was disgusting, and so I just wanted to try to see. I don't know, it upset me so much I started getting obsessed with it and researching it. And I think it's weird that within 20 miles there's multiple instances of horrific dog torture. But I don't know.
right. Um, She does. She's very educated. And again, you guys, she's going to the trial. Not sure which week she'll be attending, but she's going to be doing coverage on her channel.
Thank
And I
you.
really look forward to that. I don't know if his family had pets. Do you know if Brian's family had any pets?
I don't. That's another good question. I don't know if anyone else would. Yeah, I don't think he was a vegan because he had a soft spot for animals. I think he was a vegan for his own health. And that was because I don't think that if he could do that to people, I don't think he really cared about a dog. And I think he would want to practice and get really good with his knife first. But anyway, sorry, I got off track. I told you this is my hot button. I'm like,
No.
wait. I could be totally wrong, but I think we're gonna find that out in the trial too.
That's really interesting. Man, I don't know. Do you think that he, you know, Brian or the killer, do you think that they used more than one weapon?
I mean, it's possible, but I don't know why I have this image in my head that he really liked that knife and probably had stared at it, practiced with it, fantasized about using it for a while. So I think that unless he had to subdue them, like beating them or something, no, I think that is probably just a knife.
What about Ethan's golf clubs?
I've never been able to figure that out. I don't really know if I have a theory on that part. Uh, I have thought that for a while. I think that's an excellent question, and I wondered if we're going to hear before October that he doesn't since he stood silent, if he doesn't take life, if they'd even accept that at this point, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if they'd even be willing to do that, but it wouldn't surprise me if that happened before October.
That's interesting. And thank you, Ms. Browsy 604. And people are asking, so was it true that he would fillet fish for people that caught them? And then another person had also said that his boss at the fish place said he was fired because he could not learn to fillet.
Yeah, I mean, there's that connection too. That's really weird, right? So maybe
That's a
he
good.
learned how.
And is it possible that the animal hair found at Brian's apartment could have been Buddy the dog versus Murphy?
Could be.
Oh,
Why did someone not bury the dog? Because I think, well, the way it was, it almost seemed like it was staged. If you saw the pictures or read the article, that they put the collar out like on its side, so it was showing the name, almost like they were bragging and they wanted it to be found, which is absolutely horrific for those people. And I've watched that interview multiple times and I've read everything I can, and they did say it was at 3 a.m. But and you know, it was like his routine to go out, and he just never came back. But yeah, it almost seemed like it was put out on purpose, which is
that
sick.
it was staged. It was staged that way.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, according to the PCA, it appears that Ethan may have had a second autopsy done? Did you pick that up?
No. In which part? But where it's redacted before the.
Yeah, and it said that like it was the only one that stated like a different place that an autopsy was done. So people were saying that meant that he had a second autopsy. I don't know. I know the part that they're referring to, and I'll pull it up. But
Mhm.
it was. I wanted to hear if you knew about that or not.
I don't. I've not heard that.
Okay, hold on, let me.
Oh, yeah, I don't know, Paige. I've never actually haven't heard that. I mean, maybe the family paid for a private one, possibly. I'm not sure.
Okay. And I could be wrong. Like, this is just what people were saying, and I really didn't know. So it says, also in the room was a male later identified as Ethan Chapin. He was also deceased with wounds later determined. And then it says, autopsy report provided by Spokane County Medical Examiner, redacted December 15th. But it doesn't say that with the other victims. So people were saying, well, does that mean that he had a second autopsy done? And I really don't know.
I guess it's possible. I don't know why in this particular. Hey, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know why in this particular case, unless you guys want to guess, I mean, why they would want a second one, but I don't know. I guess it's possible. They all went to the Emmy there. Yeah. Oh my God. Thanks, Matt.
What's it called? Does anybody have like any specific, because you guys hear my thoughts all of the time, so I'm curious, do you guys have any questions for Vanessa as far as her thoughts and opinions with this? Because I'm always on repeat. Everybody knows my opinions regarding this, but it's so nice to hear a different opinion. And you know, because it's not until you really have people on with differing opinions that makes you think of something in an alternate way. And I love that. I absolutely love that.
I do too. Like a couple things you said tonight, I've got to go think about, because I just didn't. I agree. I love bouncing theories back and forth because, yeah.
Okay, Pisces says, I have some 1 second. Okay.
Okay.
And Shay, did you ever find, hold on, let me see if she found that shithole PA, sorry to curse, but like, it was Reddit or 4chan, and it was the killer is hiding out in shithole Pennsylvania. And so people are like, was that, there are people who are saying, was that Brian? There are people who are saying that's the real killer framing Brian. There's a lot of people who think the sheath was planted, and the sheath was planted, yet just like you said earlier, okay, if we're gonna go with the theory that the sheath was planted and the killer is not Brian, what is the likelihood that his DNA would get right underneath that buckle, which landed underneath the victims? And I know I hear Willie in the back of my head saying he could have picked it up at a knife show and this and that. But just like you said earlier, it's collective, right? So it's a bunch of circumstantial evidence, but you're not looking at it individually. You have to collectively put it together and stack it on. So not only did they have that sheath that was underneath one of the victims with his DNA on it, they also have his phone shutting off at the time of the murders and then pinging in the area. They also have his car that is seen doing these maneuvers. So collectively all together, but there are a good portion of people that I see who think that's not enough. Do you think if that is the only DNA, like let's just speculate here and say that DNA on the sheath is the only form of DNA as far as Brian's in that house, and that there is none of the victim's DNA in his car or in his apartment, do you think that would be enough?
I think they would have to explain how that DNA got there, because I just can't think of it another way that it got there. And I think they would have to show the whole totality. I think we would have to, I think that alone, no. I think it would have to be everything. We have to see the cast report. When you were on that screenshot, you could see the license plates, and I meant to ask, but I got sidetracked, and now I'm looking at the questions. But it almost looked like they were lit up pretty well. So if that's the case and they are lit up like that, then maybe they did see his plate. But I think when we would have to see the whole picture. But yes, I think he acted alone. Sorry. I'm sorry for missing any of your questions. And this is a really good question too. I don't know what you think, Melissa, but see how are those the plates right there?
Those are the plates, but they look like light sources, because
that's strange.
Yeah.
They're glowing, but you can't make out what's on them.
No, but I don't know. But I'm hoping it's that whatever camera caught the maneuver of him attempting to park in front of, that would be a straight shot. And if they have that, depending on where the camera is it possible they even have Brian on camera making entry?
I was just going to say that maybe they can see him through the car. His windows are not tinted from what I could tell. When you could see like the headlights shining through his windows, you could see the person in the car. Maybe they can't see him through the car, and maybe they do have him getting out of the car and going into the house. Oh, that would be crazy. If they do. That's going to be hard to explain as well.
Yeah.
And I do think that's another crazy question, is where he first noticed them, or whoever it was, if it was Maddie. Was it before he got there, or because of social media, or after?
It's almost as if, did he move to Pullman with the intention to study under the same professor? I forgot her name, but that taught BTK, wrote all the books and stuff. It's like, did he move there with this intention? Did he first find the victims online before he moved? Because it was just within such a short time frame since he had gotten there. It's almost like this was his intention all along. What do you think?
Well, I do, because of him buying the knife in April. He was at least possibly contemplating it. And this could be going on for years, and that could be some of the stuff we learned too. We could find out that he's been fantasizing about this for a long time. God knows what they're going to pull up on his computer search history and like the sites he's been to and stuff. I can only imagine, but I don't know. I think him buying that knife is pretty interesting. And do we know when he was accepted into that program?
I don't know when he was accepted, but that was his first semester there, so it's like he went there with that intention.
He wasted much time.
Oh, 2 things. He said, I look forward to being exonerated, so I want to know your thoughts on that. And 2, when he said, "Has anyone else been arrested?" So what do you think about him allegedly, according to the lawyer, at that time, that he looked forward to being exonerated? Interesting choice of words too. Not, not guilty, exonerated. What did you take from that?
I think that he is very well, and from what we've learned now, I think he is very cocky, and I think he thinks he's very intelligent, and he probably is. And I think that he does believe that he can outsmart investigators and that he can find a loophole and get out of it.
And then as far as, has anyone else been arrested?
Well, okay. So I've asked this question, but we don't even know if that was said, right? That was something that we
Yes.
heard, or that
Correct.
Brian Ensign heard.
Correct.
So we don't quite know if that was said. If it was said, I don't know.
I always thought it was just because they came in like a wrecking ball in the middle of the night, and him and his dad did that long trip back, and maybe he did discard of something along the way, even unbeknownst to his dad. And so it's not like they stopped to talk to him or tell him anything. It was a very high threat situation. They had prior approval to go in throughout the middle of the night. And so I think he may have asked, has anyone been arrested, simply in regards to maybe his dad or his mom? Like, has anyone else been taken in? Not so much another person involved in the murder.
Yeah. And someone just brought this up. He was having problems with this professor. He was in trouble. We've got the females that complained about him shutting them in the office and making him uncomfortable. The other one that he is a prime suspect, according to the police, in a break-in. There's so much, if you put it together, that doesn't paint a great picture. And have we ever heard anyone that knows him come forward and say, there's no way Brian could have done this? It's all been negative.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff says, I believe Brian was ready for a long time with the response he would give police if arrested. And right. And if we're going by his posts, he explains that he didn't feel like he was here, like we know what the visuals know. And he referenced like kind of walking through in almost a video game like state where he wasn't feeling those emotions and those connections. Mm-hmm. But what do you think about the survey that Brian did? Because a lot of people think that Brian may have found somebody else who was involved at some point in this crime by that survey.
Maybe. And maybe we'll find out that he was writing BTK. We never know. I think it's going to be interesting to see, but it's possible. That survey is really interesting. I mean, the way I had taken it was that he was trying to perfect his fantasy, his plan, make sure he didn't have any T's that weren't crossed or I's that weren't dotted. And I mean, it was interesting that he asked, if you've ever committed a crime, did you feel bad about it? What would you do differently? It's just strange, but I mean, that's a possibility too. He could have found somebody else that was willing to help. I don't know, but it's definitely a possibility.
See, I don't think so. I think if anything, he got a form of like possibly sexual gratification, not even from assaulting the victims, but just from the act of killing itself. And what I've noticed in those survey questions is that he's asking people to describe crime, right? No strings attached, just describe your crime. But the questions were more aimed at crimes that involved victims. And because you could commit crimes that have no victims either, like stealing, theft, whatever. But I think that he got some type of gratification just from reliving people's experience. Like, go into depth and tell me exactly, like, how did you know how you were going to commit the crime? Like, what did the victims do, And so he got something out of that. But I do not think everything that we know about Brian, and granted, we don't know much. A lot of it is just talk and we can't verify it. But I think that he appeared to be a loner. He appeared to not have many people around him. Why would I believe now that he would change pattern of behavior and involve someone in this crime? And if there were someone involved, I truly believe that the evidence would have shown that. There's no evidence that leads to us to believe that someone else was involved.
I think Brian operates solo. Yeah. He doesn't seem to get along with anyone, as we were talking about earlier. He is, he's not social. And when he is social, he offends everybody. He was banned from bars in Pennsylvania. The students didn't like him. So no, I think it's more likely that you know what? I just thought of that too. Do we know of any ex-girlfriends, or is Brian a 28-year-old virgin?
Not as far as we know. See, I've never gone on the incel theory, but as far as we know, I mean, we know that that girl had spoken out and said that Brian had struggled with addiction in the past, and that, but the last time she had saw him, he appeared to have been doing good. But I have not seen any, you know, Willie, unless you want to let us know, like, if you know of any history of Brian having a girlfriend throughout school. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. We've
Okay.
only heard about the birthing hips. Yeah, exactly.
Let me look for it.
The pantyhose situation.
The
Oh,
house.
the
Oh
pantyhose.
yeah. Do you think that? I don't think that there's any correlation between Brian and the girl who had her panties like stuffed in or whatever.
Well, wasn't that in March of 2022 or something? And that was before he got there, right?
Mm-hmm. It was yeah, it was was it before he got
I can't
there?
remember the date all of a sudden. Mm.
It was this, and hold on, I'll tell you the exact date. 1 second. Okay, that would have been March 2nd, 2022.
March 2nd, 2022. Okay. So that was before, unless he came in town to do something but I doubt it. I don't think that has anything to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all of the break-ins where nothing was stolen in Pullman in October and September. And as you see, yeah, I think that he may have done stuff like that. There's some interesting 911 calls where people are saying that there's footprints or that someone was in and out of their house, but nothing was taken.
Mm-hmm.
That could be him. I don't
Yeah.
think this particular one is.
And Willie said, I don't know about girlfriends, but he walked around with a few chicks.
Oh, okay.
Was that like middle school or high school, Willie? I'm looking for questions throughout all of the comments. And thank you all so much for being here, by the way. Would any woman come forward and say they slept with him? For all we know, the ones who have come forward very well may have had sex with him, but just do not want to say. Well, we had that girl who went on a Tinder date with him. Remember all that? All the way back in the beginning? The Tinder date girl?
Yeah, but they didn't hook up. She was too busy, like, pretending to throw up in the bathroom, I think.
Uh-huh. I
Such a creepy face.
think that if there wasn't there, because even if someone didn't come forward, there's evidence. Listen, there's super sleuths out there. These internet sleuths, right, are really on top of it. And if he had a girlfriend, I think, unless it was like just some type middle school type thing, I think there would be evidence of it on social media. Everything is available on social media these days, and we haven't seen anything. There is no like close friends or buddies or anyone coming and speaking out. He really appeared to be a complete loner. Well,
Yeah. And that is a good point. I want to say we don't know 100% that Tinder date is legit. I don't think it's been verified. That's her coming forward. That could possibly be not true, but I don't know.
This Mel said, yes, in high school he had a close girlfriend, friend zone. She never saw him that way. This parking lot. Okay, so I could show you where this is taken, which she got a ring doorbell after this incident. Doesn't help us too much, but okay, so this is the house. It would be 1126. No, wait. Yeah. Wait, no, hold on. Yeah, no, it's 1126. So when you're looking, yes, okay. So it would be right here, and it would be facing back out at 1122, so you could see the back of the house. So right where that screenshot was taken, she's here, and she said she wanted to put a Ring doorbell on her deck. I think that's correct. Yeah, that's correct. He hung out with a lot of people when he was using, at least, but has some other friends too, like Casey and her brother until he got mean. He was chubby in those days. You could be a total normal person and kill someone. I think the tech data will be most damning in this case. Yeah, absolutely. And again, monsters come in all shapes and sizes and forms. Look at the bail application we read for, the Long Island serial killer yesterday. The most horrific Google searches. Yet you wouldn't know.
Yes.
You wouldn't know. Look at the Chris Watts, right? Does
Mhm.
not appear to be a monster in any way. Like, everyone thinks it has to be, the Charles Mansons, or Richard Ramirez. Like, no, like it's the
Mhm.
judges, it's the doctors, it's police officers. You never know. They look just like
Yep.
me or you.
Yep. I totally agree.
A female professor said he's one of her best students. How's he's an incel? I never believed he was an incel, but that's absolutely a huge theory that has gone around pretty much from the beginning. What if that house did have cameras on 1113? She did say she had just ordered some. But I don't think it would be facing. Because where she said she was gonna put the camera was facing out towards the front where her car was, which makes sense. I don't think that unless she put a camera on the back that would face the King Road. I can't imagine.
Mm-hmm.
They did, because in the PCA again, so we know that they have. These are the cameras that we know about for certain. We have the Linda Lane footage, which is 1330 Linda Lane, and it faces out to the 500 Queen Road of parking. We see Brian's cars doing the maneuvers stated on the PCA on this camera. There's 1320 Linda Lane that faces out towards Linda Lane. On this camera, you can see Linda Lane and Taylor Avenue's intersection. We have 1112 King Road, which faces out to the King and Queen Road intersection. Again, we know that maneuvers were caught on this camera. But what we don't know where a camera is maneuvers that were caught right in front of the King Road residence right here. They were captured. Now, where that camera is from, we don't know. Maybe it was on the back of 1112 King Road, but there's no evidence to support that.
Yeah, I agree with who said that really quick? Paula. And I think you have to look at all this stuff. Like, there's been newer stuff I'm sure you guys have heard by now that's come out from the people in his class and stuff. And I wasn't aware until recently about him having these weird after hours meetings with them, shutting the door, blocking the door. And this isn't just one person, it's multiple people coming forward, following them to their cars. There's 3 other witnesses that put him at University of Moscow right before the murders at least 3 times, I believe, 3 days. And he's staring at women until they were completely uncomfortable. And then we know about Pennsylvania, the bars. So there is a definite pattern of creeping women out and a pattern of like not really caring about boundaries or the other people's comfort. And I think that matters as well. But I don't never hear anyone bring that up.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he killed before. I don't. But I am inclined to see the research that you've done on Buddy the dog, and it's just, and we know that is common, that these serial killers, usually when they were younger, started with animals. They started with animals, and they tortured animals, and they took out those sadistic, just cravings on animals. But I don't know. I'm gonna have to look more into that.
I'll send you all my stuff. I have so much on it. I just haven't put it out.
Well, it's a sensitive topic and it's hard. See those cars across from 1122. I think there was a camera above the cars, if I remember right. The house is blocked on Google. It's 1119. See those cars? Oh, right at the top here. I think that there is a good chance that this is an apartment too. So I'm curious to know if there's any cameras here, because that would be shooting out straight, or here, but we don't see any on Google Map. But I don't know. It's
Yep,
hard.
that would make sense for sure. Well, we don't know if that's in evidence, though. We don't know what's in evidence. We only know what's in the PCA, is my opinion on that. It was on the 21st. I did not know that, because that is very interesting if that date is accurate, because that's the same day as Buddy.
Wow. Elizabeth wants to know, how do you feel about him being at the Handmaid's Tale with all those ladies?
I don't know. I found it really interesting. I wish we had more than just one picture. I wish we had a video of his interactions with everybody.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm so excited that you're going to be going to the trial. That's amazing, because especially if we're not going to have cameras in there, I really think maybe they're going to do similar to what we got with Lori Vallow. At the end of the day, you'll only get audio, and you'll just have, so you being there to bring that information with us. Do you think you'll be making community posts? I don't know if you do
Oh, yeah.
on Twitter. Are you on Twitter?
Yeah, I am. Not as much as I should be. Yeah, we'll be on Twitter, and we'll be going live every single day. We haven't done public lives in a while, but we'll be back at public lives at least once a day, to keep everyone updated and stuff.
I'm so excited for that, and I really look forward to that. Do you think that the trial is going to start October 2nd, or do you think they're going to use that 20-something day period? I think that they're going to push back.
I think it's going to be pushed back too.
Yeah.
There's no way they're going to be ready with all of that evidence. I can't imagine. What is that now? That's like 2 months away?
Yeah, we're close, and it's going to fly by.
I don't think they're going to be able to be ready by then.
I don't think, but they only have that little bit of time, because they have to have Brian's right to a speedy trial. So, but I feel like prosecution is pushing the defense to like to waive his right.
Yep.
And he could change his plea to guilty at any time, right? Even during the trial, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding. I mean, I could be totally wrong, and a lot of people are very adamant that with his personality type, this would never happen. It wouldn't surprise me if he decided to. I mean, he's got that death penalty looming over his head. Maybe he'll decide to try to get a plea, but maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it's really interesting, but I appreciate you coming on, Vanessa, and seriously, like, answering all of your questions. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really look forward to your coverage, and I hope to have you on again soon. Is there any last thoughts or anything that you want to discuss?
I don't think so. I don't know. We'll have to see what goes on. Maybe we can go on one other time, like right before trial. Again, I'm predicting some crazy stuff to happen the next 2 months. I think that we're going to see, I think there's going to be some panic here. I really do.
But we are, right? With the footage and everything. I think that like this could be a tactic. Like there's something going on here.
I totally agree with you. But thank you guys. Now this was awesome. I love watching your show. I'll come on anytime. So thank you for having me.
No, of course. It's been amazing. And seriously, if you guys aren't already subscribed over at Vanessa from Unmasked, go subscribe. The mods have been dropping the link. She has amazing coverage. And I really enjoy your Patreon lives, because you do true crime and wine. And it's just relaxed and laid back. And she's very educated and smart and obviously beautiful. So she's just an all-around pleasure to watch. And I really appreciate you coming on. And I look forward to doing it again.
Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for watching.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being respectful, and I will talk to you guys all soon, so have a great night.